Sunday, everyone. Welcome to Our Issues Birmingham. It's great to have as our guest today the City Attorney for the City of Birmingham, Nicole Sullivan King. Welcome to our show, Nicole.
Thank you. I really appreciate the honor of being here with you today.
Well, I always like talking to you. How's Dad?
He's doing great.
Is
doing
he?
well.
Is he still working like me?
Yes, he is. He is.
For those that don't know it, Nicole's father and I went to law school together and were friends then and are still friends now, though we don't see each other very often. We do have that commonality. So as you've been at the city attorney's office a good while now since we last met. Give us just an overview before we talk specifically about the task force, about what goes on in the city attorney's office on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. So I've been with the city attorney's office now for 16 years.
Wow.
I serve as the city attorney under Mayor Randall Woodfin, and I've served, this is my second term. The first term began November of 2017. So within the city attorney's office, we're divided into 3 divisions. So we have a municipal court team in which our prosecutors handle a large amount of misdemeanor cases that range from your regular traffic violations, parking violations, all the way to domestic violence, DUI cases, as well as drug and gun cases. Then we have another division, which is our real estate and transactions division, and that all your major economic drives and engines within the city of Birmingham that do business with the city or derive any economic incentives or benefits from the city, those are agreements that we handle. And that division represents the city council and handles all our ordinances and resolutions that the council passes every Tuesday at city council meeting. And our third division is the litigation division, and that's our trial attorneys, and they handle cases ranging from slip and fall, personal injury cases, car accident cases, wrongful death cases, excessive force cases. So we're quite busy.
Well, I'm sure as a part of that, a litigation team, that probably is the team that is specifically engaged in what we're here to talk about today, and that is the Drug Nuisance Abatement Task Force. Now, I know I'm on that committee as well as you are the lead of that committee, and I know our viewership is concerned because we pick up and read about such tragedy on a day-to-day basis in certain segments of our community. I believe, at least in part, the purpose of the Drug Nuisance Abatement Task Force was to try to target the areas where that was going on more often than not, and to try to get to the root of the problem. So it's been in action now a few years. So let's talk about a little bit about what y'all are doing and what it's accomplished thus far. We may not get it all in, but we'll come back to it after break if we need to.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, a key component of the litigation division are handling drug and regular property nuisance cases, holding property owners accountable, making sure that they're keeping their property clean, free of crime, free of drug-related nuisances. And so out of that vision that I had for the creation of the task force, in which you're a part of, the task force was the impetus in helping me come up with a game plan on how to decide which cases would be handled, how the team would be created. So you all as a task force, and that is comprised of so many wonderful professionals from various backgrounds, law enforcement, attorneys, retired city officials. And so with that was the creation of what we now call the Drug Nuisance Abatement Team. And so that team is comprised of attorneys in my office, along with support staff and an investigator that works in coordination with the police department, code enforcement, and other city departments, as well as community residents and citizens of the city of Birmingham, to give us insight on problem properties.
And so, and we have a new chief, and I'm trusting he's on board with this as well.
Absolutely.
So it's what I think people need to understand is your responsibility in that instance is not related to prosecuting things that are going on in these places that not just are eyesores, but these places that are eyesores also have people living and doing things out of them. How do you go about identifying them? And then once you have identified them procedurally, what's the first step?
So I've been
Calling on the
fortunate
clock.
as a former prosecutor for the city of Birmingham. I was able to marry the skills that I learned as a prosecutor and the type of cases that I handled as a prosecutor with bringing this now to the civil side. And with this drug nuisance abatement team, the law provides us to bring action in Jefferson County Civil Court.
I know that working in Jefferson County Civil Court, I don't work there, but the courts have been hit in the head with COVID delay. So I'm sure that has, to some degree, affected the speed at which your team can move. But we're going to take a short break, and we'll come back and talk specifically about some specific problem areas and what's being done to rid the community of those particular areas. Don't go away. This is Our Issues Birmingham. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. I'm speaking with Nicole Sullivan-King, our city attorney for the city of Birmingham, and we're specifically diving into problem areas such as some of the dilapidated hotels and motels along the way of certain avenues. I think 3rd Avenue's got some problems. I think 1st Avenue has some problems going east. What's happened recently with respect to some of those places, and what we're making headway?
We are. I am pleased to announce that we were able to successfully settle a case with Town Motel located off of 3rd Avenue West. We also, a couple of months ago, it made media about Valley Brook Apartments. We recently settled with them as well. So we're across the gamut. We are looking at what we call exigent circumstances. Where are our citizens being affected? They're calling in. What properties are they letting us know about, as well as what we hear from the police department, code enforcement? All of those have factors in how we decide which cases that we're going to bring to Jefferson County Circuit Court.
So specifically, when you go after a motel or a residence, you're engaging with the owner of that property, correct? Not necessarily correct. The people that are hanging out there. What do they do, and how does a resolution, I'm not asking you to breach any confidence or anything, but just in general, what would be a resolution that would hopefully solve the problem? And I'm hopeful that what you guys do and what you reach in terms of settlements does solve the problem, but sometimes it doesn't.
Right, and I think it's helpful to your audience, to those who may not be aware, to give them a background on the law. And so the Drug-Related Nuisance Abatement Act allows for the city attorney to bring specific actions in Jefferson County Civil Court for owners who have drug activity on their property. There are things that we have to take into consideration. We look at the number of calls, the number of times that an ambulance has come to the location. We look at the fear of tenants on the premises. We look at, are there any health code violations? We look at specifically, have there been any search warrants executed by the police department related to drug activity? We look at the type of weapons seized on the property. So in this particular instance, which you mentioned with motels and apartment complexes, what we have done is, by law, we have to provide the property owner notice that this type of activity is taking place on their premises. And we do that by what's called a 21-day letter. That's statutorily required by law. So our team are just not targeting specific owners. They are aware before a lawsuit is even filed, either by what we call a Phoenix letter by the police department, notifying them of certain drug activity on their property, as well as a separate letter from my team. They're on notice that activity is taking place. And so what we do when we're able to amicably work in a partnership and resolve these matters is they take assessment of the evidence that we present to them. They look at security mechanisms, improving lighting, improving security gates, improving the egress and the access, the in and out of the buildings, and how they can make it more secure. Also looking at hiring additional security. We've also had property owners that aesthetically make changes to their location, whether it be landscape, whether it be painting and improving the appearance of the property. So those are all good things that we are noticing with property owners who want to be in partnership in making sure that their properties are safe and free of drug activity.
So those people that get those 21-day letters from two different places, do they respond more often than not, or do you have some people that just ignore them? I guess you do have a little.
Most respond. I'll put it that way. Most respond.
And do they pay attention when you say, look, this is what we're going to do if you don't work with us and help us address some issues that we think are problems?
Absolutely. And what we found is that these owners want to be in Birmingham. We appreciate their business. We appreciate residents that have homes in Birmingham. What we often discover as well is some of these owners do not live in the state, and they're not aware, or where they should be aware, I should say, of what's going on their property. So it makes them more accountable in making sure that they have the right tenants, the right screening mechanisms to make sure that their properties are safe for the community around them.
Well, do you think, like some properties are abandoned, so there is no lease? A lot of leases these days include language that allow the landlord to exclude a person for drug activity or drug behavior. So I imagine that's a part of what you would like landlords to include in their leases. So do the individuals that are the behavior problem, are they responsive? Do they move out? Do they recognize, hey, this is no good for us anymore. If we're going to do this, we got to do it somewhere else, or we got to quit?
We've been fortunate. Yes, we've been fortunate with the property owners that we have dealt with. They have made sure to take quick action against those problem tenants.
That's
so
good.
We've been fortunate. I will add, what also improves our partnership is that these owners see that we're dedicated to improving the community and making sure that it's a safe environment. And so any settlement proceeds that the city receives goes right back into the community through the city's neighborhood revitalization fund to fuel growth and safety and mechanisms to make sure that citizens can enjoy the quality of life.
Let's get back into that when we come back from break, because getting the money back into the neighborhoods, I think, is a very good point. This is Our Issues Birmingham. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. Nicole King is sharing with us some things that you may not be aware of that go on in her office and in the city of Birmingham in general, in helping to reduce ultimately crime, specifically violent crime, but in this instance, probably more drug-related crime, which leads to violent crime often. So now we have an owner. The owner's either agreed to do what you have asked him to do. Are there fines imposed on the owners?
Yes. So the law provides that in a drug nuisance abatement action, should the court find that the property owner knew or recklessly allowed tenants or inhabitants on the property knowing that drug-related activity was taking place, there can be a fine anywhere between $500 up to $50,000. During the time that the court proceeding is taking place, if there's any violation, there can be a penalty of $1,000 fine per day that the nuisance activity takes place on the premises. And so with our settlements, in most cases, depending on the severity of what has happened on the location, we ask the court to retain jurisdiction for up to anywhere between a year to 18 months. So should any more criminal activity take place on the location, we can take it back to the court and allow the judge to make a determination on the severity of what happens next with that property owner.
So like to compare it to a criminal case, it would be like a diversion program. In other words, this is our agreement, but we're going to hang this over your head to make sure you comply with the requirements of our agreement. If you do, I assume ultimately the case is dismissed. And if you don't, then back before the judge and we'll let him or her figure it out. I think these go before Judge French maybe, or are they circulated?
They are divided amongst the circuit judges.
So when a fine gets imposed, they pay it into the court distributes it to the city?
That is correct. That is correct. That is when a fine is imposed. Now, we've been fortunate. A lot of our cases have been amicably resolved without having to take that particular action, but that is an option. What we found is that the property owners agree that certain things should be made, certain changes should be made at their location, and they've been willing to do that cooperatively because their interest is in making sure that they have a viable property within the city of Birmingham. The same as if you look at hotels, motels, and your residential homes. We're finding that property owners are really eagerly making the necessary changes to make improvements. We've seen substantial improvements. And Tommy, I really want to just take this time to thank not only my task force and my team, I really want to thank the citizens of Birmingham. We could not be successful without them. I receive emails, my team receives phone calls that help us to keep good communication with the police department and code enforcement. These citizens are actively involved in making sure their communities are cleaner, safer, and just a better environment. So I just want to thank them for being in a great partnership with our team.
Oh, it definitely, I mean, you can't be everywhere, so you have to rely on citizens to let you know what's going on that you're not seeing. So when an agreement is entered with a landowner, is there a team or a piece of your team that circles back to ensure compliance and report back?
Absolutely. So I've got a great team of attorneys. I have an investigator. They absolutely make sure that these owners are compliant. And we do take, in some cases, some of these back to the court to make a decision and let the court know that the owners aren't keeping their end of the agreement.
And so when they go back, do they start back to square one?
They do sometimes. It's at the discretion of the court. But we make sure that we bring all of the evidence and the problems that have not been rectified through our agreement. And I can just tell you, the courts aren't very happy when property owners aren't keeping their end of the agreement.
Well, my suspicion is they don't want to be fooling with it to begin with. There's so much work to do. A person comes in and makes an agreement to do something and then fails to do something. It would be somewhat irritating to me as a judge as well. Well, I thank you for being with us today. I know you do a lot of work beyond just the drug nuisance abatement task force and your team that you've accumulated as a consequence of that. Just briefly, do you see arrest coming out of it?
No, I don't. And I
Okay.
really could not be more grateful for the task force for really helping us begin what I hope is a legacy of improving the city of Birmingham through the drug related nuisance abatement team.
And of course, you're getting positive feedback from the citizens.
Absolutely. Every day.
And
And we can be reached at problemproperty@birminghamal.gov.
and if someone wants to report a property, that's where they go to do it.
That's where they go, or they can feel free to call my office directly, 205-254-2369.
Thanks a lot for being with us, Nicole. Appreciate your time and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is Our Issues Birmingham. Thanks for being with us this week. We'll see you next time.